Let us put our hands together for Makerere University Performing Arts. What amazing sounds. Ladies and gentlemen, we may take our seats. They say that he who cannot dance puts the blame on the floor. We can see Makerere University Performing Arts has nothing to blame because they have done us justice this afternoon. Former Chief Justice of Uganda, His Lordship Samuel Wakowambuzi, the keynote speaker this afternoon, Nsibirwa Apollo Makubya, Vice Chairperson, Makerere University Council, Right Honorable Daniel Fred Kidega, members of University Council present, the Vice Chancellor, Makerere University, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Finance and Administration, Professor Henry Alinitwe, former Katikiro, Owekitiibwa Joseph Mulwanyamuli Semwogerere, the second Deputy Katikiro, Owekitiibwa Robert Wagwa Nsibirwa, Owekitiibwa Prince David Wasajja, Owekitiibwa Professor Twaha Kawase, First Deputy Katikiro, abataka abakulu ab'obusolya, Omutaka Mutesaasira akulira ekika ky'Engo, Omutaka Kasujja akulira ekika ky'Engeye, Omutaka Walusimbi akulira ekika ky'Effumbe, abalangira n'abambejja, Omulangira Reverend Kajumba, Omulangira Wasajja, Baminisita ba Kabaka, Owekitiibwa Christopher Bwanika, Attorney General, Owekitiibwa David Mpanga, Minister for Lands and Buildings, Owekitiibwa Mukwaya, Owekitiibwa Bwenvu, the Chief Executive and Managing Director, DFCU Bank, Mr. Charles Mudiwa, the family of the late Martin Luther Nsibirwa, the Guild President and members of the Guild of Makerere University, Chairman Nsibirwa Hall, and Chairperson Nkobazambogo Makerere University, our dear students and students from other institutions, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my pleasure to welcome you all on this bright and sunny afternoon on this hill of Makerere University. What a blessing for us at Makerere. My name is Nampeo Zahara. I'm the acting deputy principal for the School of Law, Makerere University. I'm a member of the faculty, and I'd like to join all the members of this university in welcoming our guests in a special way. Can we please give a round of applause? Thank you, Makerere University, for organizing this annual public lecture in honor of Martin Luther Nsibirwa, whom we all know as a celebrated patron and forefather of Makerere University. Martin Luther Nsibirwa not only reigned as the Prime Minister, Katikiro of Buganda, a two-time Katikiro of Buganda, first from 1929 to 1941, and then again for the briefest of moments in 1945. But he had many other advantages that he did, and one of them is the reason that we are here this afternoon, that he granted the hill that we sit on this afternoon as Makerere University, defying all odds and protests from officials within the kingdom. By virtue of this great and noble act, we as Makerere University are here where we are this afternoon. This afternoon, we are celebrating Nsibirwa through the second annual public lecture. We organized as Makerere University the first Nsibirwa public lecture on the 6th of May 2022 as part of the Makerere at 100 celebrations, where we were celebrating 100 years of existence as a university. And we're honoring and celebrating the life and indeed the martyrdom of the late Katikiro of the Buganda Kingdom. As Makerere strives to become a research-led institution, we continue to host public lectures and the Nsibirwa public lecture annually, not only to celebrate a life that stands tall in the history of Makerere, but also to spark debate and intellectual discourse. So we're not only here to celebrate, but we hope that from this gathering we are going to gain discourse that will advance the research agenda of the university as well as the development agenda of the country. We therefore thank very much Makerere University for this step that has been taken. This afternoon we have a long program. I wouldn't want us to take too much time on any one single event. We have a spice, a topping of the event later on. But I'd like to invite Chairman Nsibirwa, Chairman Nsibirwa, and Chairman Nkobazambogo. Come and welcome your alumnus, your fellow Nsibirwan. I don't know whether that's what you call them, in the way that you know best, in 1 minute.
Nja kusaba abantu ba Katonda abakungaanidde wano ffenna twanirize n'essanyu lingi Omulangira David Kintu Wasajja. Engalo zibe z'amaanyi bannange. Nja kubasaba n'obuwombeefu bw'ekitalo ennyo twanirize Katikkiro eyawummula Oweekitiibwa Mulwanyamuli. Twanirize omwogezi waffe omukulu owa leero Oweekitiibwa Apple Nelson Makubuya ne maama. Nja kubasaba twanirize Oweekitiibwa Twakawaasi omumyuka wa Katikkiro asooka. Twanirize Oweekitiibwa gwa Nsibirwa omumyuka wa Katikkiro owookubiri. Twanirize Oweekitiibwa Christopher Bwanika Ssaabawolereza w'Obwakabaka bwa Buganda. Twanirize Oweekitiibwa Luwaga Mugumbule omukubiriza w'Olukiiko lwa Buganda. Twanirize Oweekitiibwa Daudi Mpanga Minisita wa Ssaabasajja Kabaka. Nja kubasaba neera twanirize Reverandi Kajumba ali naffe olwaleero Omulangira. Abengo naffe ffenna twanirize Omutaka Muteesaasira. Nja kusaba twanirize Omutaka Kasujja n'engalo ez'amaanyi. Ate era tugatte engalo ezo zonna twanirize musajja wa Kabaka Barnabas Nawangwe, Vice Chancellor wa Makerere University. Tujja kusembayo nga twaniriza Dean of Students mukama wange Namuwonge. Ab'ebitiibwa nze Adrian Lubyayi n'eddira Ngabi Akabbiro Jerengesa nva musajja Ssaabasajja Kabaka eri Buddu nzikiririza mu Ekereziya Katolika. Nze ssentebe wa Nkobazambogo Makerere University. nga maliriza okuwa obubaka bwange wano, nja kusaba nnyo abantu ba Ssaabasajja Kabaka n'abantu ba Katonda bakuŋŋaanidde wano olwaleero nga tujjukira mukadde waffe Katikkiro Nsibirwa okubaweereza obubaka buno. Ffenna gye tuli mu byonna bye tukola tufisengawo akadde twenyigire mu bintu ebizimba eggwanga lyaffe, mu bintu ebizimba obwakabaka bwaffe, mu bintu ebizimba ebitundu byaffe gye tuva, mu bintu ebyo ebizimba n'okukyusa empya zaffe nga Katikkiro Nsibirwa bwe yakola. Ku lwa Katonda n'ensi yange, ayi Katonda kuuma kabaka wange.
Protocol observed. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Mayambala Derek. I'm the chairman in Nsibirwa Hall. Nsibirwa, a culture, a North Kotor, Nsibirwa, a statesman no, officers and men no, and my lollipopo, mind lollipopo, anthem zo. Oh Lord, you know I am a bachelor boy till summer holiday. My Lord, Aruapako, Aruapak, we shall remain united in the park. We either win, in North Koto, in Krumo, a brotherhood, in Krumo, also Jeffo, activismo, Kuruma, we shall always move forward. We shall work together for success, even when we meet some tribulations. Activists forward we ever move. Thank you so much. That is our culture at Nsibirwa and in Nkrumah Hall. In North Koto, a Pastor Sempo, Oktuamo, Ra, Cha, Alo. Or they lose. Activists. Forward we move. Ra. A brief one. North Court, Nsibirwa Hall, Nkrumah Hall. Today is our day. It is in Nsibirwa Hall. Our motto as it stands, we either win or they lose, and statesmen, we shall always stand. Today, I wish us to commemorate Martin Luther Nsibirwa for the contribution he made towards the establishment of the education in Uganda, not just in Makerere University. I think that deserves a mighty hand clap. I think we as statesmen, we as activists, we as North Quarters, we should learn particular lessons. And one of them should be sacrifice above self, which were displayed by Martin Luther Nsibirwa. I want to thank the family, most especially Mama Rhoda. Thank you so much for always bringing back those memories that we can stand high and we say that we are part of Nsibirwa, we are part of Makerere University. Thank you so much. God and my country, Education for the bright future.
Wow. Northcote Oye. Mary Stewart Oye. Boxer, that's me. Loombox. Anyway, today is the day for Nsibirwa, Martin Luther Nsibirwa, and we are here to celebrate and honor him. And for that, we are thankful to God for today. I don't know whether our keynote speaker was able to recognize some of those lyrics. Ra, Sha, Ha. But anyway, maybe you will catch up one day. We invite you to come and talk to the young men and be able to catch up with the lyrics. On that note, let me invite Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, our chief host this afternoon, to set the pace and welcome us to the Hill. Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, Vice Chancellor.
The Chief Justice Emeritus, His Lordship Samuel Wakuwambuzi, our keynote speaker, Owekitiibwa Apollo Makubuya, Vice Chairperson, Makerere University Council, Right Honorable Daniel Fred Kidega, members of the University Council, the Deputy Vice Chancellors and members of management, the former Katikkiro Owekitiibwa Joseph Mulwanyamuli Semwogerere, the second Deputy Katikkiro Owekitiibwa Robert Wagwa Nsibirwa, my OB. That is very important. Members of the Lukiko and Buganda Cabinet Ministers present, Honorable Rhoda Kalema, who has written, I think, the most important book on the history of Uganda. And I hope everybody reads that book. The Guild President and members of the Guild, members of Nsibirwa and Nkuruma. I wonder what happens when Nkuruma and Nsibirwa are playing football. Do you win or they lose? Students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As the manager of the program has said, we, of course, don't have much time, so my remarks will be very brief. I have a long speech written by my office. But I think talking about Martin Luther Nsibirwa, I don't need a written speech for two important reasons. And I want the young people to listen. As far as education in Uganda is concerned, and particularly as far as Makerere University is concerned, two important dates are very important. The first date is 14th April 1875, when Kabaka Mutesa I wrote a letter to Queen Victoria of England. The letter was in Uganda, and it read as follows. It might not be accurate because my Uganda sometimes goes. But he said, Njagala, ompereze abantu bo, abagenda okuyigiriza abantu bange, okuwandiika n'okusoma. Full stop. That letter in the original handwriting of Sir Paul Kagwa is kept in our university library. It is a historical document which will definitely be in our university museum when we eventually open that museum. That was the beginning of modern education, because we had had education before. Of course, the Queen didn't really understand what Kabaka Mutesa wanted, so he began by sending missionaries, but it's okay, because the missionaries are the ones who eventually brought education. The second date is 4th September 1945. That is the date, as we were informed by Honorable Rhoda Kalema earlier on, where many of you are not today, is the date when he was brave enough, when Katikiro Martin Luther Nsibirwa was brave enough to sign a document which many people had feared to sign, to allow the colonial government at the time to take possession of the land at Makerere in order to expand Makerere to become a university. And as many of you know, the following day he was assassinated on the steps of Namirembe Cathedral as he was going to pray. So those two dates are extremely important for us. And it is just befitting that we honor the people who sacrificed for the development of our country through the introduction of modern education. If Makerere started in grass-thatched houses with barefoot students, but is now one of the greatest universities in the world, it is because Kabaka Mutesa wrote that letter that time, and Martin Luther was brave enough to sign that document. I would like to thank all of you for coming. I want to, in a special way, to thank our keynote speaker for agreeing to give us the keynote address on this occasion. And just like all of you, I'm anxious to hear what he will tell us. Thank you very much, and I wish all of you a good listening.
I think Professor Nawangwe deserves another round of applause for making a successful attempt at Uganda. At this juncture, let me recognize some more of our guests that have joined us this afternoon. Oweekitiibwa Dennis Walusimbi Sengendo, Omuwi w'amagezi Lubiri, Oweekitiibwa Christine Mugera Kasule, Oweekitiibwa Rita Namyalo Kisitu, Oweekitiibwa John James Chaze, Honorable Maria Chiwanuka, Mr. and Mrs. Walusimbi, parents to Oweekitiibwa Apollo Nelson Makubuya, we welcome in a special way. Professor Ferez Mutibwa, Professor Luanga Lunyigo, Oweekitiibwa Professor Masazi, Omutaka Kyadondo akulira ekika ky'Envuma. I forgot to mention, you're very welcome, I forgot to mention that ndi muzukulu wa Mugema Owenchima Nampeo. Makerere University prides itself in networking and partnerships. There's nothing that we have done by ourselves, and as we move into the new century, we call upon partners, and we also target to consolidate our old partnerships in order to become that first-rate university globally. And therefore, it is my pleasure to welcome this afternoon one of our partners who has supported this event, the Chief Executive and Managing Director of DFCU Bank, Mr. Charles Mudiwa, to make your remarks. You're most welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. Well, it's always nice to come back to university and still see the energy and passion of youth, and also see the hope and promise of the future that the youth carry and bring to us today. I've been asked to make brief remarks, and I'm aware that we don't have a lot of time, so if you allow me and indulge me, I'll dispense with the protocols, and I'll just say all protocols observed. Thank you very much. Ra, 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 ra. In early this year, Time magazine wrote an article by Jennifer Hadugan, and I'm going to read the open 2 paragraphs of that article. Deep in the bowels of the icy mountain of an island above the Arctic Circle, between Norway and the North Pole, lies a resource of vital importance for the future of humankind. It's not coal, oil, or precious minerals, but seeds. Billions of these tiny brown specks from more than 930,000 varieties of food crops are stored in the global seed vault at Spitsbergen, part of Norway's Svalbard archipelago. It is essentially a huge safety deposit box holding the world's largest collection of agricultural biodiversity. Inside this building is 13,000 years of agricultural history, says Brian Lainoff, lead partnership coordinator of the Crop Trust, which manages the vault, as he hauls open the huge steel door leading inside the mountain. This vault has come to be called the Doomsday Vault. Why Doomsday Vault? Because there's an expectation that should something apocalyptic happen to the world, we will all have no seed and no food. And therefore, humankind is preparing for the future by creating a bank of seeds for the future. As I heard the young people singing today and shouting and making their chants, it reminded me of those seeds, because this is the seed of the future. Should we, all of us here in our 50s, 60s, 70s, perish, the seed that we generate and live today are these young people who are shouting, ra, ha, hoo, ha. Today in the world, we have 7 generations living. We have got the greatest generation, which is still alive. We have got the silent generation. We have got the baby boomers. We have got the Generation X, millennials, and then, of course, Gen Z, which we just saw in action today. I think all of you here are Gen Zs, unless there are mature entries who are sitting here, but I don't think so. Then, of course, the babies for these young guys are what we call the Generation Alpha. This generation is the generation that owns Makerere University today. Not us, not the Vice Chancellor, but these young people. This institution belongs to them and the future. And today we celebrate a man who had the vision to see the importance of bequeathing the future to these young people. When this land was given away, it was to ensure future generations are educated. And there are not many of us today who are courageous enough to do that. We have the vision and forethought and ability to understand and see the future, even without a degree, about the importance of this education. So my ask is, we as the living today, are we good stewards of this heritage? Are we good stewards of realizing the importance and the value of this wonderful asset we inherited, which somebody lost their life for? Or are we just passers-bys, willing time and hoping for the future that something will happen? My challenge, and coming from DFCU, is that we appreciate and respect the importance of education. We also appreciate the importance of history. We appreciate the importance of culture. And being in this country for over almost close to 60 years now, we are part and parcel of the heritage of Uganda. And today, we also want to pay homage and respect to the institution, but more importantly, to the man who dedicated his life and commitment to the education and to the future. The one who saw the doomsday and planted the seed And he didn't wait for this vault that we see in Norway today, but gave a vault here in Uganda by a piece of land to allow us to inherit the future. That we have got the 7 generations that happened during his time, and they're all still alive, and they've all gone through this process. And we really want to say thank you to his family, and thank you to everybody for that wonderful recognition and the importance of that. So as DFCU, sorry, before that. So in today's world, the importance of education as a catalyst for social change can therefore not be overstated. It empowers individuals, equipping them with the first tools to critically assess their surroundings, drive positive transformation, and when education is accessible to all, regardless of their background, it becomes a force for social cohesion and progress. As we remember Nsibirwa's life and legacy, let us be inspired by his dedication to education. Let us commit ourselves by removing the barriers that hinder access to education, to fostering a culture of lifelong learning, and to instilling in future generations the belief that they have power to shape a better world. As DFCU Bank, we are proud to be associated with the education sector, not just as a leading provider of credit to the education sector across the country, but also as a key player in transforming lives and business in Uganda as a whole. Additionally, we believe that by supporting education in Uganda and pioneering the spirit of many Martin Luther and Nsibirwas over the next years of our service to this country in agriculture, infrastructure, IC, trade, we will see a more prosperous and growing Uganda. Let us remember that as we look at the 7 generations alive in this world today, in Africa we say, an educated child is the letter we write ourselves to the future. Let us today write letters to ourselves to the future. I thank you and I wish you a great day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudiwa, for those inspiring remarks and challenging us to write letters to ourselves for the future. I'd like to also recognize the presence of Ms. Anne Reisman, who is the country director, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung for Uganda and Sudan. Both CAS and DFCU have supported this public lecture. Thank you for the money. They say that money is measured in the legacy we leave behind for those we love and those we inspire. So thank you, DFCU and CAS, for inspiring the future generations. Let me also recognize the presence of Owekitiibwa Nelson Kawalia, Emeritus Speaker of the Buganda Kingdom, Luchiko. Mr. Nsibirwa John, son to the late Katikiro Nsibirwa. Dr. Robin Chibuka from the IMF. Peter Kimboa, Chairman, NSSF. Mr. Adrian Muchibi, Nabagereka Development Foundation. Dr. William Kalema, grandson to the late Hero Nsibirwa, and Susan Nsibirwa, granddaughter to the late Hero Nsibirwa. We are most honored that we have such a big delegation of guests from Buganda as well as from the Nsibirwa family. We don't take it for granted. At this juncture, we are getting to the gist of our event this afternoon, and that is the keynote address by our keynote speaker, Mr. Apollo Nelson Makubia Owekitiibwa. But why are we really here to do this public lecture, especially on an issue of culture? The theme of this public lecture is situating the role and relevance of cultural institutions in modern Uganda. We are looking at the past and we are looking at the future. With lessons from the past, we not only learn about ourselves and how we came to be, but we also develop the ability to avoid mistakes and create better paths for our societies. Therefore, history is not about the past, but actually it is the relationship between the past and the present and how we get to the future. And therefore, we must talk about history and culture and how we make ourselves better as a nation. This year's lecture is given by Owekitiibwa Apollo Nelson Makubiya. Apollo Nelson Makubiya is the founding partner, one of the founding partners of Max Advocates. He's a senior palace advisor to Kabaka Ronald Muwendo Mutebi II, and he's also an author, Thrones and Thorns, Reflections on the 30 Years of Restoration of Traditional Rule in Uganda. He has done a lot of things, and one of the most important this afternoon is that he taught me human rights in 1997, which set me on the path because I was recruited as a human rights lecturer at the School of Law. So you also set your mark on me, Owekitiibwa. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you, Owekitiibwa Makubiya, to give us your keynote address.
Please join me in thanking Zahara Nampeo, my former student. I can see that Makerere has been kind to her. She has done me a great, huge favor by recognizing and welcoming many of the dignitaries that we have this evening. And I will go the lazy route of saying all protocols observed, except, of course, recognizing and thanking the Vice Chancellor, the Chairman of the Makerere University Council, which were Deputy Katikiro, the first and the second, which were Dr. Twaha Kawase and Robert Wagwan Nsibirwa, and all my friends were from Mengo. Also recognizing Mlangira David Wasajja, my Lord, retired Chief Justice Wambuzi, and Mama Roda Kalema. I see a packed room, and I must also thank the students, because I think the students make up the bulk of the attendance today. It's really an honor that you could turn up in such big numbers. I especially recognize my friends from Nsibirwa Hall. Nsibirwa Oye. So, officials of government, officials from DFCU Bank, officials from Konrad Adenauer Foundation, I thank you very much for enabling us be here this evening. I know that I have a Bataka and all that protocol that was covered, and I will not repeat that. Please excuse me. I want to thank all of you, especially the university leadership, for welcoming me. And I want to thank particularly the Vice Chancellor, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, for inviting me to speak at the second memorial lecture commemorating our hero, Martin Luther Nsibirwa. I want to acknowledge his leadership in marking and celebrating 100 years of Makerere. I think it has been a wonderful celebration, and it continues, and I want to congratulate you and your team at the university. Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather in this room not only to pay tribute to a great, remarkable man who played a pivotal role in the history of Buganda, in Uganda, and Africa, but to continue in the celebrations of the centenary of Makerere University. It is therefore a double celebration of knowledge, history, and progress, and an opportunity for us to explore the dynamic role and relevance of cultural and traditional institutions in modern Uganda. For me, it is also a special day because the university allowed me to launch my new book, Thrones and Thorns, 30 years of restoration of traditional rule in Uganda. So it's a celebration as well for me and my family to be able to use this platform to launch that little book. I cannot think of a more fitting occasion to commemorate these significant milestones. But because even as we reflect on the legacy of Martin Luther Nsibirwa and the journey of Makerere University, we do not just revisit the issues that shaped our past, but reflect on the current ones as well, as we imagine a future of peace, a future of prosperity, a future of progress for our country, Uganda. At this moment, we are reminded of the power of education, of the power of vision, and of the power of resilience. Values that were championed by both Nsibirwa and Makerere University. I'm therefore deeply honored for the privilege accorded to me by the university to deliver this lecture. Makerere University, standing tall at a century of existence, has been the cradle of knowledge, a beacon of progress, and a source of pride for Uganda and Africa. Makerere University has shaped minds, fostered creativity, and ignited flames of change that continue to burn brightly today. Makerere's journey has not been without hurdles, but each hurdle has been an opportunity for growth and introspection. A testament, in my view, to the resilience of our people, the tenacity of our scholars, and the dedication of university leaders, including the late Frank Kalimuzo, the late Senteza Kajubi, Professor Xavier Wandera, George Kiria, Professor Sebufu, and others that have led this great university. As a product of Makerere University, I was able to join and thrive in the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom, where I was a good student. And while there, the people that I met, the teachers and the professors that I met, never asked me, never wondered where I came from. The only thing they asked mostly was about Idi Amin, and the other one was about Makerere. I know that there are many Makererians that have left a mark in the world, including Professor Opio Oloya in the University of Toronto, Canada, Professors Oloko Nyango and Sylvia Tamale at the University of Harvard, Professor Kanyehamba and John Jean Barria at the University of Warwick in the UK, Professor Dan Wadada Nabdele at the University of Dar es Salaam, Benjamin Mkapa, ex-president of Tanzania, Mwai Kibaki, ex-president of Kenya, Professor Kidu Makuya at Yale, Professor Mamudani at Columbia, and the list goes on and on. Professor Nawangu, if I haven't mentioned the university you went to, you forgive me. In Luganda we say, Omtoja Amanyi, Enkuba Jetonya. I want to extend gratitude to the family of the Nsibirwas for preserving Nsibirwa's legacy and commend individuals like Honorable Rhoda Kalema, Oweekitiibwa Waggwa Nsibirwa, Honorable Maria Kiwanuka, all of whom are here,
Dr. Gladys Zikusoka, Dr. William Kalema, Susan Nsibirwa, and many other Nsibirwas. John Nsibirwa is here, for their outstanding contribution to Uganda and to the world. In a special way, I want to congratulate Mama Rhoda Kalema upon the publishing of her book, Life is But a Weaving. I think at your age, you are an outstanding Nsibirwa, and you have held the flag very high for the Nsibirwa family. Thank you and congratulations. So unlike the professors I've mentioned above, Martin Luther Nsibirwa had no formal education. He grew up under the patronage of Apollo Kagwa, as we had this lunchtime. He taught himself to read and write, and he served the Kingdom of Buganda for an uninterrupted period of 41 years. Nsibirwa started as a land clerk in the government of Kingdom. He became a Gomborora chief, and later a Saza chief. He became a Mugerere and a Mukwenda in Singo. And thereafter, he was appointed as Omwanika. Omwanika means the minister in charge of finances in 1935. He stayed there for a very little time before he became Katikiro of Buganda under the time of Sir Daudi Chwa. And he was reappointed by Sir Edward Mutesa in 1945. This profile of a man who is self-educated, of a man who with no formal education, demonstrates that leadership is not about university professors and people achieving academic qualifications. Leadership is born, and even without Western education, we see that people like Nsibirwa demonstrate that in Africa we had and still have leaders like Martin Luther Nsibirwa. I want to tell you a story about my stay here at the university. I joined Makerere University in 1987, soon after the liberation war that brought in the government of the NRM, which is the ruling party today. I was admitted to Northcote Hall. And when I joined Northcote Hall, I was immediately immersed in the culture, in the rich culture of Northcote. You saw some of it this afternoon. This culture is called the Northcote spirit. It's a spirit that invariably involves singing, drumming, and some degree of militancy and defiance. Some people thought and used to call us noise makers. But we were not making noise. Actually, that is music. Only that they didn't understand our type of music at that time. The hall had a command structure. It used to have what we called the Military Supreme Command Council. And I rose in the ranks of this command council and became a speaker of the Northcote colloquium. But even at the height of my officialdom in Northcote, I didn't know who Northcote was or what he represented. I don't know if my brothers have some idea here of who Northcote really was. But if they don't, let me use this chance to share my knowledge about Northcote. And I only discovered this recently as I've been involved in the campaign to decolonize and to remove the names of those colonial figures that were subjugative and oppressive and abusive to us as Africans and our dignity as a people. Thank you. And these names are many, but I can pick just a few for today, including Captain Lord Luget, the guy who massacred thousands of people in Bulingugwe, down here in Munyonyo, Busabala, in pursuit of a colonial agenda. People like Tanan, Trevor Tanan. I don't know whether you know about Tanan. Tanan has a road named after him, where the State House is to be found in Kampala, opposite the Sheraton Hotel. Trevor Tanan, him and Henry Colville were responsible for the decimation of Bunyoro, again, in trying to make sure that the people in Bunyoro and people in Bukedi are brought under the domination of British colonialism. So, recently I had to inquire into who Northcote was, and this is what I found. Northcote was posted to Nyanza province. Nyanza province at that time, this was in the early 1900s, Nyanza was a part of Uganda. And in 1905, he was part of a punitive expedition to Kisii land. There's a place called Kisii in southern Nyanza. The expedition carried out a month-long orgy of violence and punishment for the raids which the Kisii people had carried out. In 1907, Northcote was deployed as the district commissioner of Kisii land. The Kisii, who nicknamed him Nyarigoti, considered him their mortal enemy. And on January 18th, 1908, in the middle of a punitive expedition that he led, Northcote was attacked by a fellow called Otenyo. Otenyo attacked Northcote and speared him and injured him. When Otenyo was caught, he was tried in public, dragged by a horse in the middle of the town, and was executed by a firing squad in public. He was then beheaded, and his body was shipped to London. So Northcote's expedition, I don't know if this is true. Yeah, Northcote's expedition was responsible for the death of more than 100 people in Kisii. And on his recent visit to Kenya, you may have heard, the King Charles III, talked about the British record in Kenya, including against the Mau Mau in the 1950s. The King said, "Wrongdoings of the past are a cause of great sorrow and the deepest regret." He said these actions were abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans. In that context, it is a bit curious for me that the leadership of Makerere University many years ago found it fit to name a major hall of residence after Sir Geoffrey Alexander Stafford Northcote. Because, yes, he was a chairman of a council of education somewhere, but his record, his antecedents, his record shows that he was brutal, he was completely oppressive, and responsible for mass killings in Kenya. This brings into light the question why we in Uganda, why we in the university continue to honor and celebrate such figures, and not just in the university, but in all other public spaces in our country. I therefore, Mr. Vice Chancellor, applaud the decision to change the hall's name from Northcote to Nsibirwa, and Makerere's leadership in recognizing heroes like Okot Bitek, where we had lunch. I saw the space is called Okot Bitek, Yusuf Lule, Kwame Nkrumah, and Patrice Lumumba. I hope that the university will find some other spaces for some other notable alumni, like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, one of Africa's leading writers and the author of a book called Decolonizing the Mind. I also hope that the university may consider that other individuals should be celebrated, including the late Joan Namazi Kagezi, an alumni of this university, who was assassinated in the line of duty. Joan Namazi was a classmate, and she, like my wife, seated over there, Ombeja Anne Nakayenga Juko, granddaughter to Mwanga Basamulekere, was a beautiful woman, was brilliant, and was brave. As a heroine of our generation, I believe that she deserves our admiration and should be immortalized, if not anywhere else here at Makerere. Vice Chancellor, decolonization and embracing decolonization in the teaching and learning at Makerere and beyond is essential, not only to debunk Eurocentric narratives of our history, but also to provide a more accurate representation of our heritage. Nsibirwa, along other Baganda leaders such as Apollo Kagwa, Hamuka, Smeika Kungulu, Gabriel Chintu, Matayo Mugwanya, Michael Chintu, Eridad Mulira, Ignatius Musazi, and others, laid Buganda at a turbulent time, marked by the struggle against British imperialism in Uganda, and this time was profound in its contradictions between traditional leadership and colonial rule, tradition, religion, and Christianity. It was also turbulent because of the conflict between African nationalism and imperial domination. Difficult choices had to be made. Difficult choices had to be made, whether to preserve an old traditional order or to embrace a foreign modern one. The clashes that arose in this context were numerous and often resulted in protests and loss of lives. For Nsibirwa, as we've heard already this morning and this afternoon, these contradictions proved very costly. His views as a devout Christian and a progressive leader on matters like the remarriage of Namasole Irene Drusilla Namaganda, who was Kabaka Daudi Chwa's mother, and Kabaka Mutesa's wife to Daudi Chwa, and mother to Mutesa II. That remarriage to a Fumbe man called Simon Peter Chigozi cost him his caticroship. This is because the remarriage of a Namasole in Buganda culture was a taboo. Nsibirwa was replaced by Katikiro Wamala, who was an extremist in terms of his belief in tradition, and Wamala and others, including people like Spire, Mukasa, and others, contributed to the riots or the protests that we saw in the country in 1945. So the colonial regime removed Wamala and prevailed over Kabaka Mutesa at that time to return their man, Nsibirwa, to the caticroship. And once in power, Nsibirwa once again embarked on implementing policies, including the land laws or land reforms that the British had proffered. In this effort, he championed, as we've heard this afternoon, the grant of the land and Makerere for the construction of a university. For this and for other reasons, he was assassinated at Namirembe on 5th September 1945. That date to the Nsibirwa family is ominous because it is on that same date, 5th September, that the Nsibirwa family lost Stella Nanscombe Mukasa to cancer, Stella, an alumni of this university, was a leading light in the advancement of women's rights in the world. A conference hall has been named after her at the headquarters of the International Center for Research on Women in Washington, D.C. I mention this because Stella was special to me. She was my first wife and a family member of the Nsibirwas. The fate suffered by Nsibirwa at once illustrates the challenges faced by traditional leaders in serving interests of their communities while accommodating the interests of the colonial power. The interests of the two entities were dichotomic and opposed to each other. While the objective of colonialism was to supplant traditional authority and replace it with a political and economic structure that served its exploitative interests, the aspiration of traditional leaders or entities was to end colonial domination and to reinstate traditional sovereignty. In this context, and given the power relationship or power relations between the two, imperialism won, and it prevailed over the traditional entities that it left emasculated. This is seen in the draconian deposition and deportation of Kabaka Mwanga, Omukama Kabalega, and Sekabaka Mutesa II, who were all resistant to colonial domination. The weakening of traditional entities continued in various forms, even after Uganda obtained independence. And although the Kingdom of Uganda tried to break free in the 1960s, you know that in 1960, Uganda declared itself unilaterally independent from the British. This didn't succeed because the British thwarted that attempt. And it resulted in the incorporation of the kingdom into the country that we know as Uganda today. But what is important here is the fact that the sacrifice So the sacrifices of people like Nsibirwa and others led to Uganda's independence in 1962. The fate of traditional leaders and institutions did not improve once Uganda got independence. In fact, traditional institutions were abolished altogether in 1966, following the attack of the Lubiri in May of 1966. This is normally referred to as the 1966 crisis. And this is because after independence, Uganda's new political elite faced the complex challenge of reconciling traditional governance with Western democratic ideals. And the clash between traditional governance structures and Western-style democracy presented with them a huge dilemma. The new leaders faced a conundrum in managing traditional leaders on one hand and managing their ancient institutions in what they saw as new and modern states following a Western kind of style democracy. Striking a balance was not easy, especially because there was mistrust between the new politicians and the old or traditional leaders. This mistrust gave birth to the notion that African tradition and governance were an antithesis of democracy and thus an obstacle to development and modernity. Like the colonialists before them, the new African leaders frowned upon traditional institutions and traditional leaders, relegating them as outdated, parochial, and even tribal. They entrenched on their, the new leaders entrenched autocracy, centralization of power, and relied on legal and political structures inherited from the colonial era upholding Western ideals over indigenous ones. However, the diminution of or abolishment of traditional leaders in Africa did not lead to peace or to progress. In fact, many African countries, Uganda inclusive, ended up with failed governments, with conflicts, and failed democracy, leading to political crises, military coups, and in some cases, state failure. Today, 60-something years after independence, Africa and Uganda grapple with the crisis of governance, a crisis of corruption, a crisis of underdevelopment. It is in this context, ladies and gentlemen, that we have seen a resurgence of traditionalism, driven by a renewed interest in cultural heritage and the wisdom and knowledge of our ancestors. This trend offers a sense of identity, a sense of stability, and a sense of confidence in an ever-changing world. It is a testament to the enduring power of Africa's cultural heritage, and we must recognize that this resurgence is not only here in Uganda, but across the continent. When you go to South Africa, you will see that people are taking more pride in their culture and in their cultural institutions. When you go to Ghana, when you go to Nigeria, when you go to Ethiopia, when you go to Sudan, Southern Sudan, you see that cultural institutions are taking a more active role in the governance and the development of their countries. But this resurgence raises several questions. And they are not rhetorical, but I will leave them with you. First of all, can these traditional institutions, all kingdoms, coexist within a modern post-colonial state? Is it possible that you can have a governance structure that embraces both the Western, modern, and the traditional institutions? Do they provide solutions to service delivery, poverty eradication, conflict resolution, and governance? I think the lady from Konrad Adenauer Foundation talked about this, and in her case, she said, yes, they can. Do they, in their resurgence, challenge modern states and inherited notions of democracy? Because you see, many times when you talk about traditional leadership, the counter is those are undemocratic. They are autocratic. In some cases, some people claim they represent a feudal order, You know about feudalism. And you wonder, is that the case? Are traditional institutions incapable of dynamic adaptation to modern times? This is a question I put to you. And in answer to those who feel that traditional order represents the order before colonialism, I don't believe that when we talk about traditional institutions, and I'm going to use the Kingdom of Uganda as an example, we do not mean, or we do not think that they represent traditionalism as it existed before colonization. But they've been able to adapt in a dynamic way to respond to the changes and the needs of today's world. The last question is, can these institutions blend both modern and traditional systems to foster political stability and development? And if so, and in my case I say, yes, they can. If so, are they justifiable reasons, constitutional or otherwise, to the limitations that are placed on these institutions? To answer these questions, Mr. Chancellor, we must consider the significance of the restoration of traditional rule in Uganda in the last 30 years. What do we see? And this is partly what my little book is about. What do we see? We see a proliferation of traditional institutions beyond what we used to know, Buganda Kingdom, Busoga Kingdom, Ankole Kingdom, Toro, and so on, which were recognized at the time of independence. As of this year, with the exception of the Bugabe ship in Ankole, the Banyore Cultural Institution, and the Bunyara Cultural Institution, there are 14 traditional institutions or leaders that have been officially recognized. There are 15 others waiting in the queue. They have filed their applications for recognition. And if these were to be admitted, this would bring the total number of traditional institutions in Uganda to about 29 traditional institutions. And this would be almost, if not over half, of the total number of indigenous communities in Uganda, which under our constitution are 65. So that means, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of interest, but what does it portend? What does it mean? I think that the growth in the demand and interest for the restoration of traditional institutions, as I have demonstrated, has not meant that they've become more influential or powerful players in the political economy of Uganda. Most traditional institutions are marginalized, they are fragmented, and they suffer a crisis of legitimacy of some of its leaders. Not all, but many. That's the first aspect of the 30 years of restoration. Many face internal conflicts, and those are to be expected. Others suffer some bad relationships with the government. There exists discordance with the central government on several issues, including on the non-return of expropriated assets, on land tenure, and the creation of support of sub-traditional entities. In Buganda, the support given to Bululi, Bunyara, and Kochi, and in other places, in Kasese and so on. This discordance has sometimes resulted in violence, as was seen in 2009 in Buganda, and the massacres in Obusingabwa Rwenzururu, and the arrest and detention of its king, Omusinga Mumbere, in 2016. These tensions showcase the delicate nature of power sharing in modern Uganda and a need for reconciliation and for dialogue. The other aspect that is evident is the collaboration in areas that are non-contentious. There has been a lot of collaboration in the field of education, and here collaboration, I mean collaboration between traditional entities, kingdoms, and the central government in fields of education, poverty alleviation, health, environment, and culture. So, if you're talking about dance, music, and drama, there's going to be collaboration. If you're talking about the demand for justice and the return of expropriated properties, or challenging policies on land, challenging policies on governance, there's going to be discordance. So, are traditional institutions bound to be just custodians of culture and music and drama? Or can they play a more meaningful role in improving governance and addressing questions of development? Another aspect that we see in these last 30 years is the growing popularity, in the case of Buganda, of the Kabaka ship. The Kabaka and the Kingdom of Buganda continue to be popular and to exercise considerable soft power. The Kabaka is a revered custodian of culture and a source of guidance and inspiration for his people. This is evidenced by the high numbers that turn out at cultural and other kingdom ceremonies. Additionally, to the involuntary financial support to the kingdom over the years. You see, because traditional institutions are denied access to public resources, it was feared by many, by some, that they may not survive. It was hoped by others that because of this starvation, their lives would be short-lived. But in the case of Buganda, and I'm happy here to see Mwanika Nsibirwa and a former Mwanika Twa Kawasi, they will tell you that over the years, the budget of the kingdom has grown from 20 billion to what I think the last budget was 200, over 200 billion. And this money is raised not out of taxes or access to public resources, but out of the support that the people of Buganda and the friends of Buganda give to support this institution. Would they support it if it was hopeless, if it was not meaningful, if it was not relevant in their day-to-day lives? This is a rhetorical question, and I think we all know the answer. So, the support that is given to the kingdom suggests that it enjoys both legitimacy and credibility. In fact, Buganda Kingdom serves as a significant pressure group for politicians despite its constitutional limitations as a cultural entity. We also see support that the support enjoyed by Buganda Kingdom today at once highlights nagging political questions in Uganda and problematizes its governance and constitutional model. Can the kingdom's popularity be harnessed for political stability and socio-economic development for all is a question. The kingdom argues, and I think the speakers for the kingdom will tell us, that through the federal system of government, it can make a more meaningful contribution to its subjects as well as to the country. From the above, traditional institutions are seen to play a vital role culturally, economically, and politically. Like I said, they bring stability, cultural preservation, and a sense of unity. They deserve, therefore, the attention, in my view, and the recognition for this role. But at the same time, many face limitations in adapting to the complex challenges of the modern world. Because, as I told you, we have 13 recognized cultural institutions. They are all at different levels of development and achievement. It's not possible to just use one size fits all. As I said, some suffer some limitations and at different levels. But in the case of Buganda, two issues stand out for discussion, namely the federal question and the land question. These questions remain thorny and unresolved. And the question we have is why? Let me say just briefly one or two things about the land question. In the context of increased pressures on land due to population growth and economic growth, Uganda is witnessing unprecedented levels of land grabbing and the violent eviction of people from land across the country. We all know what has been happening in the last few weeks about the Balalos. My friend Daudi Mpanga, I don't know whether you have any Balalos you represent, but there's a crisis. There's a crisis about land and occupation of land and eviction of people from land. Yet, the state's response to stem the evictions and to reform land laws have not always provided effective solutions to the problem, but they have instead aggravated the problem of land. There are many reasons, I don't need to repeat them, that belie this crisis in the land sector. On the federal question, I would like to spend a bit of time on this. The quest for federal autonomy and federal rule in Buganda has been fraught with challenges, symbolizing the difficulties in balancing traditional authority with central governance. From its restoration to the present day, the Kingdom of Buganda has resisted unitary arrangement and has instead demanded federal rule. Question is why? Its reasons are set out in various memoranda to the government, but may be summarized in its interest in power sharing and self-determination. the accommodation and the respect for Uganda's ethnic diversity, and the preservation of cultural heritage, the protection of its natural resources, especially land, and the promotion of its indigenous institutions and governance systems that have served it well in the past. The Kingdom points to the conflicts and failures of a unitarist government founded on a colonial legacy and advocates for a constitutional order that recognizes and respects traditional authority. It believes that federalism leads to better representation and local accountability, and that it ensures that there is equitable distribution of resources and reduces disparities in development. In a nutshell, the federal question is one of a governance nature, is a governance question relating to a suitable system of government that respects the will and aspirations of the people, but also recognizes the delicate nature of Uganda as it was constituted by our colonial masters. I'm very happy that we have Nsibirwa Semogerere in the room, who led Baganda in the process of constitutional review, constitutional making in the early 1990s. Katikiro Semogerere led groups, thousands and millions of people, to submit views, recommendations on how people in this part of Uganda would like to be governed, but in what I consider an undemocratic way. The government disregarded the overwhelming support for the option of federal rule and instead imposed a unitary system in the 1995 Constitution. The government argued that the objectives of federalism could be easily addressed or attained through a decentralized system of government. Political scientists in this room will agree with me that federalism is completely different from decentralization. In a simple way, I can explain that whereas in a federal system you share power, and once that power is shared, it cannot be recalled or re-centralized. In a decentralized system of government, what you decentralize, you can actually re-centralize. And that's the fundamental difference between federalism and decentralization. And this is why, for Buganda, this decentralized concept, I'm sure Mulangira Wasajja likes this word, concept. This concept is unacceptable, and that is why it continues to agitate for a more meaningful sharing of power. So, a disappointed Buganda disagreed with this view, arguing that decentralization was a ploy to defeat or delay its demands. Today, the federal question, Chancellor, in Uganda is still in a stalemate. Neither the central government nor the Kingdom of Buganda has changed its position, and there's little likelihood that this will change very soon. But we cannot continue like that. We cannot continue like that. There needs to be a solution. We need to find a solution. And this is why I thought, using this platform, I would use Makerere to be the basis, the center at which some of these questions may be debated, may be discussed, may be advanced for the benefit of the whole country. Thank you. So Africa is replete with examples of successful integration of traditional institutions into modern governance structures, striking a balance between tradition and modern systems. A system that respects tradition but also embraces modern forms of governance. In its search for solutions, I suggest that Uganda needs to study and take lessons from experiments of federalism and devolution. Even in Kenya, in Kenya, you know about Majimboism and so on. But the Kenyans sat down through national dialogue and agreed on devolution. It may have its challenges, but it is working, and it is working. And I think that Uganda shouldn't shy away from experimenting on this issue of power sharing. Thank you. And how do we get there? Because sometimes you find we have challenges, many challenges of corruption. Sometimes it's iron sheets, other times it is road potholes, other times it is coin, no, not coin anymore, ADF and so on. But maybe there's a need for a national dialogue. Because besides the federal question, Uganda has many unresolved questions. Land question, federal question, and so on. It also has a question of militarization of its politics, and all of these require nationwide consultations and consensus outside the present political constitutional structures. For this reason, citing the lack of constitutionalism, intolerance of political dissent, increased poverty, etc., religious leaders, and I'm happy that we have Bishop Mutebi in the house, and other elders have called for a national dialogue to build a consensus on the achievements, failures, and the future of an independent Uganda. The goal of dialogue must be to agree on a new national consensus to consolidate peace, democracy, and inclusive development so as to achieve equal opportunity for all. In September of 2018, President Museveni launched the national dialogue, but there's little progress that has been registered so far. But even though the reasons for stagnation are unclear, what is clear is that the need for dialogue remains undeniable. So, where are we 30 years later with traditional institutions? One could say, for those who are sailors and used to the life on the waters, on the lakes, we will say we are still at sea. We are still at sea. But the case of Buganda Kingdom exemplifies how the authority and legitimacy of traditional leadership warrant a re-evaluation of the governance and constitutional models adopted in Uganda and in other African countries. By recognizing and incorporating traditional institutions into the fabric of governance, justice, and social cohesion efforts, some persistent and complex issues such as the Buganda question can be addressed in the post-colonial era. It is important to acknowledge the internal weaknesses and the lack of homogeneity, which I mentioned earlier, within some of these institutions, matters which undeniably present challenges as to how they may be viably integrated into modern governance systems. As I end, I wish to say that the challenges of governance and underdevelopment in Africa are vast, but traditional institutions and leaders have a significant role to play. The future of Africa is promising, but only provided that we adapt to meet the evolving needs of our societies while preserving our identity and our values. By addressing limitations that are faced by traditional entities, by shedding the legacy of colonialism and embracing a dual approach that combines both traditional institutions and modern systems, Africa can chart a way forward towards inclusive development, one that is rooted in its rich cultural heritage and diverse traditional practices. Leaders like Nsibirwa and institutions like Makerere University inspire us to tackle the challenges of development and governance with education, innovation, and a commitment to our people's well-being. We must preserve these legacies and carry the torch of knowledge forward. It is up to us. It is up to us to shape the future and to illuminate the path for generations to come. A few years ago, in 1998, President Bill Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, visited Uganda. And at the Freedom Square, I don't know if it is still called the Freedom Square, she gave a wonderful speech, which I remember. And I want to quote from that speech. She stated that the struggle to protect human rights and overcoming challenges of development that we face as a country depends upon the millions of actions that are taken every day by ordinary people like us. She added that those of us who have the power to speak, and all of you who are affiliated to Makerere, this great university, by virtue of your being here, and by attaining this education, you not only have the power to speak, but the obligation to do so. As our country history shows, there is much that we can speak against in Uganda, and there's a lot that needs to be done. We, the Ugandans, we, the people of this country, have a duty to do so. Like the Nsibirwas before us, we must stand up, we must speak up, we must work together to build our country and university for a brighter and better future. Back in the day, at the end of a speech like this, I would say, Northcote Oye, but I think it's more fitting to say, Nsibirwa Oye, Nsibirwa Oye. Thank you all, and may God bless you.
I think our keynote deserves a standing ovation. Standing ovation. Wow. What a deserving keynote address. Owechitiwa, you took me back to the classroom in 1997. I can see my students are busy calculating my age, but it's okay. To the huge, rich array of topics that you taught us beyond just human rights. And VC, and maybe vice chair. I don't know whether, like the military, we can recall him, because I think they can recall retired generals. We can recall him because he has shown that he still has a lot to offer. Thank you very much, Owechitiwa Apollo Nelson Makubia. Thank you for the history lessons. Thank you for the lessons about Northcote. I was at the university in 1996 when Northcote was closed. It was a very emotional time for us as students because our colleagues were dismissed from the university. But thank you for that lesson. Thank you for the lesson about Lugard and Tanan. Now we can appreciate and decolonize education going forward. Thank you for highlighting the different dimensions of culture's transformative power on the development of Ugandan society. Thank you, Owechitiwa, for illustrating the role of culture in decolonizing education through revaluing language and customary norms. Thank you for emphasizing to us that there is a link between culture and development, such that any development task would be unsuccessful if it does not have roots in a people's culture. Thank you for honoring Martin Luther Nsibirwa. Thank you very much. The students from the School of Law, first year constitutional law, you'll be having an exam question from this keynote address. I hope you are taking notes. Let me recognize the presence of the following distinguished persons amidst us: Bishop Hannington Mutebi, Assistant Bishop, Kampala Diocese; Owechitiwa Alhaj Hamisi Mukasa Kakomo, Minister of Agriculture, Buganda Kingdom; Owechitiwa Robert Mviri, Omukiise mu Lukiiko lwa Buganda; Sebagala Kigozi, Katikkiro Fumbe Clan; Pastor Martin Sempa, Acting Principal, School of Law, Makerere University, Dr. Benson Tusasire. The School of Law is happy to be co-hosting this public lecture because of our colleague who is here this afternoon. Dr. Fiona Mpanga, I don't know if she's still here. Yes, Dr. Fiona Mpanga is a Mpanga. For those who know, you know. Ambassador Moses Chiwe Sebunya, Chairman, University Council of the International University of East Africa. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We are privileged as Mackay University. At this juncture, I'm going to welcome you to a moderated session. I've not had enough of our distinguished speaker, but I'd like to give us the opportunity to ask one or two questions emanating from the keynote, but also from other thoughts that you may have. So kindly bear with us. We're going to have a moderated discussion for a few minutes, and then we shall get to winding up the event. The media people, can you kindly wire up the speaker? I hope my earrings don't drop off in the process. Owechitibwa, we didn't have a lot of time to prepare you for the questions, but these are really random, and also to allow our audience to interact with you. But I'll take the first go and ask something very practical. You've given us a rich paper. But I'd like to know, going forward, before we open up to the public, what culture-based local strategies should be established to support Uganda's development agenda? Can you give us one or two specific culture-based?
First of all, thank you everyone for that applause. I really feel very honored. Thank you. Thank you, Zahara. You see, when we talk about cultural institutions, there's a tendency to think as if they are 30 years old. These institutions date many, many years, certainly before Uganda was ever conceived of as an entity. And from the first missionaries, the first explorers, the first Europeans that came to Africa, they were surprised, they were impressed even, in some cases, at the level of development, at the level of organization, at the technology, including Caesarean operations in some parts of Buganda and in Bunyoro. So when you talk about a strategy for development, this strategy has also always been with us. We have, as a people, traded from here in Buganda to as far as the Indian Ocean, the coast. So we don't need to take lessons about how to develop or begin thinking of strategies today. They are embedded, these values, these abilities are embedded in our societies. If only we could trigger them and give these institutions, these entities, the capacity, the freedom, the room to undertake some of these strategies. I mentioned my colleagues from the Kingdom of Buganda. Even without access to national taxes or revenues from the center, they've been able to build hospitals. They've been able to build schools. They've been able to build hospitals. Universities. They've been able to do so many things advancing our community. So in terms of strategy, it's the ability, allowance of these institutions to be able to organize and to remove restrictions, unnecessary constitutional, legal, and political restrictions to allow them to do what they have always done.
Thank you very much. In other words, people-centered, strategies that are inclusive and that are context relevant. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite only 2 questions from the audience. And I'm going to request Issa to help me with that function. Just 2 democratically chosen questions. I see 3 hands. Maybe we can allow 3. There's a very tall hand here. Let us start with this gentleman here, and then we can go with the tall hand. We'll take them all, and then we'll allow Owechiwa Makubia to respond.
Thank you very
Please
much.
introduce yourself briefly and fire
Thank you very
away,
much,
just as a question, please.
Thank you very much, our moderator, and of course, thank you very much, our keynote address speaker. Impressed by what has been said about Nsibirwa. And I'm very happy that the university already recognized him by changing the name Northcote, which is my former hall, to Nsibirwa. So the university has done something in his honor. The religiously, the Anglican Church already honored him by offering him a permanent plot at the cathedral, St. Paul's Cathedral in Namirembe. I wouldn't say it's a question, because I also belong to the ones I'm addressing the question to. Is the Uganda government at any time thinking of honoring this hero by establishing something which will remind us of his good works in the, in the coming generations? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we go to the tall hand? And then we shall go right behind the tall hand. Pastor Sempa, a question.
Yes, I would like to ask, protocol observed, thank you very much. I'd like to ask what your advice would be to religious minorities who are also dealing with institutional and traditionalist opposition, because even new religious groups are seeking, just as the very same time the colonial government was seeking to bring new education. We too, who are the new religious groups, are really struggling with traditionalism. And we find obstacles along the way, denial of space and land, just as the very same concept that Nsibirwa dealt with. What advice would you give to us? Because this has been going on since, some of you know, Gugude. Gugude asked for land in the university and the colonial government refused it because they said, you are a minority, we only recognize majorities. I noticed you talked about equal opportunities. Even us, as born-again Pentecostals, we are looking also to challenge traditionalism and also ask for equal opportunity to support our students at the university. What advice would you give to us in light of the sacrifices and the challenges that Nsibirwa faced? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right behind you.
Thank you. I'm Reverend Philip Fred Kato, Secretary General, Uganda-Korea Friendship Association, Embassy of the Republic of Korea in Uganda, South Korea. My question and comment to the presenter: can we have some lessons we can learn from other countries, especially those with cultural institutions that have advanced in technology and other kind of infrastructure development, and at the same time they have protected their family values, material culture, music, foods and beverages, and so on? What lesson can we learn from them, and even their languages? Because many times our young people, they think that modernization means forgetting and destroying your own cultural values.
Thank you.
We have, for example, in Korea, we have a technology that can protect the traditional languages. We call it the talking pen. It can help the young people from the childhood even up to the university how to protect their cultural language. If you want, you can contact me on that issue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'd like now to move it to this side. There is a hand there and one at the back, and then we'll close. We are still with Nsibirwa. He's still around with us, so we'll be able to interact with him even after we close.
Thank you, Nsibirwa Apollo Makubuya, for that insightful lecture. My name is Jonathan Mwesigwa Sechizivu. I'm actually a former personal legal assistant to Nsibirwa when he was third deputy Katikkiro of Uganda and Minister for Constitutional Affairs. Nsibirwa spent a lot of time talking about the history, the contradictions from an external point of view. Yet in situating the role and relevance of cultural institutions in modern Uganda, and in the case of Uganda especially, you spend little time on the internal contradictions. In that, there are instances where internally we've actually gotten the rope and hanged ourselves in how probably we've negotiated the restoration of the Kabakaship, how we've negotiated the return of the expropriated properties, and if in fact the kingdom of Uganda was restored, or it was the Kabakaship that was restored.
As you wind up, sir.
So, would you like please to highlight a little more on those internal contradictions, where we see the Bataka are arrested, where we see the Kabaka doesn't know where his Bataka are going. What informs that? What is the problem? Please, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the last question at the back, the hand right at the back. If you can just move closer also, so we can find you in the middle.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Nsibirwa Apollo. I'm Okorobe Pasco, currently the Health Secretary for Nsibirwa Hall. So my question is, you talked about encouraging or allowing these cultural institutions to do or to actively get involved in these roles of development without these restrictions, because as you stated clearly, these institutions have been here way back. We don't know for how long. So they have this capacity or they have this ability. So my question is, if this freedom or this liberty is granted to them, how can it be ensured that there will not be competing forces with the ruling, let's say the ruling government, as we have seen cases like the first time these cultural institutions were abolished in Uganda, and then the recent massacre or the incident that happened in Rwenzururu in 2016. So how can that balance be ensured such that the ruling government, even if it tries to empower these cultural institutions, it doesn't get that competition of fear or that political pressure that maybe a cultural institution may remove loyalty and allegiance to the ruling government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nsibirwa, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I should start with the last one. The conflicts that exist between the central government and traditional entities and so on, and how do we avoid conflict. But I think there's a false dichotomy between these two entities. The people in the central government are Ugandans, they have clans, they have, where they come from. So to draw this false line between, traditional institutions where they belong and the central government is one of those colonial approaches to governance that we must deal with. There's no dichotomy. The thing is, how do you sit together, the people who are so-called democratically elected and the people who are leaders through indigeneity and through these traditional entities. I've talked about experiments elsewhere in Africa where, these two entities coexist through discussion, through constitutional making, where you agree that this is your sphere of influence, this is my sphere of influence. If there's a convergence, this is how we deal with the situation. If there's a conflict, this is how we resolve it. This question of gunning down, individuals or groups of individuals every time there's a conflict, it cannot take us anywhere. We talk about dialogue, and I think I talked a little bit about it, a national dialogue, where we bring all our differences on the table and chart a way forward in a blended and harmonious manner. That's the last question. To go back to the first question, Dr. Jones Chaze is a leading scholar also, has published a lot on his clan and on other matters. He's talked about how do we in Buganda plan to recognize people like Nsibirwa. I think that Buganda has, and the Kabaka has been very active in the past in identifying and recognizing individuals for their contribution to the kingdom. I can name a few. The family of Kaya Kavuma was here. Where are you? I think the late Kaya Kavuma was one of those who, recipients of the highest honor of the shield and the spear. I think I have Reverend Dan Kajumba. Where is he? He's here. He's also another hero in Buganda who has received a similar honor. I believe that the Kabaka, and I cannot predict, even though I am a chief advisor, at his time, he will appoint and select other people who deserve the honor. And I believe Nsibirwa should be one of those.
Yes.
Pardon? Yeah, when they give you a spear and a shield honor, it comes with the whole, what do you call it? Yeah, you don't go home empty-handed. Yes. So Pastor Sempa and I go a long way. I think we are the same generation here at Makerere, and in the Twitter space, he's always hitting on me. Pleased that you are able to ask this question, which is something I wanted to touch on, but let me use this chance to discuss religion and how its role in the colonization agenda and how we were deceived by the first colonialists who claimed that they were here on a civilizing mission. Because you see, Zahara, civilizing mission means what? Coming here, the first thing they should have done once they came to civilize us was to build a university, to build schools. But it took them how many years?
But to devalue our culture as well.
Exactly. So it took them, in the case of Makerere, until 1940, where's the Vice Chancellor?
45.
Until 1943, for a group that claims they want to civilize us. I went to the University of Cambridge. It does date back in the 18th century. It's thousands of years. For a civilizing mission, why did it take so long before education institutions like this were installed and we were taught about technology, about science, about all these other things? But instead, it is the Christian missionary schools, like King's College Budo we had, like Namilyango 1902, and these others. It was the missionaries. And why were they keen, the missionaries? It was a recruiting exercise. The missionaries were recruiting new people into schools so that they would imbibe with them these foreign spiritual beliefs and discard their traditional African beliefs. And so that after that they became easier to manipulate. I think it was Jomo Kenyatta who said that in those days they were telling Africans to close their eyes and pray. Bishop, don't listen very much. And when they opened their eyes, they found that their land were gone. So religion, we must be careful. And I'm not in any way attempting to demean your beliefs. I mean, it is okay that people have divergent belief systems, but those belief systems should not be at the expense of other beliefs, in this case, of African beliefs. But what the colonialists did was to demonize and discard, and even to the point of discarding our traditional wear. I see you're very colorful in your leopard skin. I don't know where you got it from. But they even criticize the way we dress, the way we ate, the way as being, what is the word they
Uncivilized.
use? Uncivilized, primitive, backward, and so on. So, clearly, even then, between the Roman Catholics, between the Christian fathers and the CMA society, seeds of discord, seeds of division, seeds of destruction of traditional systems. So, in today's world, 2023, where we respect, and we must coexist and tolerate each other, we must respect and coexist. I support the idea that people who have beliefs like yours and the pastor from Korea, you respect. But we respect yours, you respect ours.
Yes.
The other curious thing that I wanted to mention, but I didn't have time, is about the land and why Nsibirwa had to go through what he had to suffer because of giving land. Because you see, land in Uganda, in Buganda, was divided between the crown land and private Milo, and land was given to certain institutions. The British, out of 19,000 square miles of land in Buganda, they gave themselves 9,000 square miles under the crown. No accountability, no representation, no questions. Now, why didn't the British use part of that 9,000 square miles if their intention was to civilize and to promote education in Uganda? Why did they have to go into compulsory acquisition of land so that people like Nsibirwa had to lose their lives? I don't know whether I'm making myself clear. The British had control of 9,000 square miles of land. Why didn't they build a university in that 9,000 square miles? And instead, leading people like Nsibirwa into a situation of conflict between him and his people. Because Nsibirwa, and there are others, not just Nsibirwa, who suffered. Paul Kavuma, Michael Chintu, and it continues up to today. Because as Katikiro, you are standing in between two forces. The force of the Baganda and their interests, and the force of the colonialists or the inheritors or the successors of colonialism. So who do you please? Who do you please? In this little book, I've mentioned that, maybe I shouldn't go into that book because I want you to buy it. But I mentioned the contradictions that we find ourselves into, right in the middle of these contradictions, and as a result, we have situations such as the one Nsibirwa suffered. So, Mr. Fred Kato, you raised an interesting question about some lessons where cultural institutions can learn technology and so on. And the immediate thing that comes to my mind is Japan, China, India. They don't call themselves traditional institutions, but they talk their languages, they develop their technology, and when you find the Chinese, you find them dressed in a kimono, or, they don't discard their tradition. And they have developed technology without the help of the West, necessarily. I know they may have learned a few things, but the point is that in Africa, we've tended to relegate cultural institutions and traditional leaders as moribund, as, decadent, even, I don't know what.
Secondary.
Yes, as people who cannot do anything. Yet, as I was mentioning earlier, in Buganda, we had technology for smelting, we had technology for medicine, we had technology for even people like Martin Luther Nsibirwa, who never went to school, rose to the high levels of becoming a Katikkiro of Buganda twice, and he's the person we are celebrating here today. Where did he go to school? So the traditional methods, the traditional, the heritage, and the capacity to develop is inherent. And the Japanese have it, the Indians have it, the Chinese have it. Today, China rules the world in many ways, doesn't it? But when you go to China, they speak Chinese, they eat Chinese, they develop all their stuff in Chinese. One could say that's tribal, but I don't think it is tribal. Or parochial, but I don't think it's tribal. It's a nationalism. It is a culture. It's a heritage that has helped them achieve where they have reached today. So yes, we can have our values and we can learn from other cultures. The challenge that we have in Uganda is not just Uganda, sometimes Africa, is to undermine, to belittle, to disrespect. And this is something that we picked from a colonial order, and we must go away from that. Sometimes people ask me on Twitter, if you are talking about decolonization and so on, why first of all don't you change your name? Why do you wear a Western suit? And why do you speak in English? That's a conversation that I want to have, but I think it will take a whole day. It's a choice. It's a method of dress. If I go to work, and this is the accepted order, I can wear my tie. But that doesn't kill the passion that burns inside me for Africa and for African values. You know, person is not defined by what they wear or what language they speak. I can speak Chinese, French, German. Does that take you away from your African heritage? No, it doesn't. So, Jonathan Mwesigwa. Contradictions. Yes, of course, and I mentioned that there are contradictions, limitations, and internal challenges that traditional institutions face, not just here in Buganda. I talked about Bururi, Bugerere, and Kochi. I mean, in the administration, there may be issues, but does that stop us from talking about our relations with the center? We need to address those issues. And those limitations I mentioned, addressing them will be one of the ways to ensure that as we forge ahead as a country, as a kingdom, we must resolve. Those contradictions exist today. If you go to the United Kingdom and talk about the difference between Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, you will see that even within the Conservative Party, there are challenges, there are problems, there are differences.
True.
And I don't think that has killed the Conservative Party. Even here in Uganda, we know about FDC, we know about DP, we know about NRM. There are internal contradictions. The question is, how do you resolve those contradictions? How do you not allow those contradictions to kill the institutions that you belong to, so as to prevent it from forging ahead? So it's not a denial, and I'm not in denial, only that I didn't want to spend the whole book about the problems that we have in Mengo and the challenges that we have and the people who have stolen this and stolen that and how they negotiated badly on this or that. That needs to be resolved. But is it going to contain us? Is it going to hold us from moving ahead? We must find ways of resolving those differences and those contradictions. And if you want, you can write a book about that.
Yes.
Yourself, you can write a book, and they will invite you to speak here at the Nsibirwa Memorial, and you articulate these issues, the differences. Okay, I think that's all. I had hoped that I would get a question or two. There's Professor Chwanko from a lady, and that would be good. Yes.
Okay. All right. I think we have to stop it here, but thank you, Owech Tibwa.
Professor Chwanka.
Oh, okay.
Professor Chwanka and I have a problem. So I want him to say it so that I can respond to him.
Which one?
He went to Oxford and I went to Cambridge, and he never thinks that I...
That you studied.
But there is a commonality there. We are Oxbridge. I would like to thank Honorable Makubuya. I would like to thank the family and the university for organizing this lecture, because it's important to remember those who have built this country, those who have built this institution, etc. Many years ago, one of the lecturers here, Margaret McPherson, wrote a book called They Built for the Future. And I would like to say that we can say the same about Martin Luther Nsibirwa. He built for the future. And I would like, therefore, to propose that in order to perpetuate his name, let there, either by the family or by the university, create a Nsibirwa Memorial Academic Prize. These prizes don't have to be big. They are tokens, but they are symbols of recognition. In our days, the Shell Oil Company, endowed a prize for the best Bachelor of Arts student, and I won it on my graduation. I don't know where that died. So I am proposing that the family creates a Martin Luther Nsibirwa Academic Prize to perpetuate his name in this university. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Dr.
for that proposal
Dr.
to the family. Another question from Dr.
Sebunya.
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 Sebunya. Dr. Sebunya. Sebunya.
Thank you, Wechtiva. My name is Dr. Jeff Sawira Mukasa. And in your presentation, you talked about culture. And one of the things you talked about, how this has evolved. In particular, you touched the name and educated us about Northcote. I happen to be in Nkuruma, and yes, we're neighbors, but we have our rivalry between Northcote and Nkuruma. I won't go there right now. I think it's nearly maybe 25 years or so since Northcote was named Nsibirwa. But we do see that the legacy of decolonization, as we've indicated, that the Northcote still remains. You saw the flag here, I didn't see Nsibirwa, I saw Northcote. And what I'm trying to argue is that in part of decolonization, is it just by changing names, or is it by changing the mind? Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Jeff, you know this is my favorite subject, and we can spend a whole evening on decolonization and name changing. Name changing is not a name changing for its own sake. And I think there's been a misconception that we want to change all names that are foreign, that are European, that are colonial, and replace them with Africans. Name changing requires a reevaluation of our history, an understanding of our history. I want to think that my fellow Northcoters will walk out of this room today thinking again about Northcote and why we celebrate and why we just, continue in something without understanding, or even after understanding, without caring very much about why. So, if you understand your history and some of the atrocities that these people are responsible for, and compare what Joan Namazi stands for and what Colville stands for, and you celebrate Colville and you somehow don't celebrate Joan, I think right in there is a failure to understand who you are and take pride in the people or the heroes, the true heroes. It's also in there that perpetuates a legacy of colonization of our minds, of our education. I don't know if Dr. Tamale is still in the room. Yes, Dr. Tamale has been talking about, in fact, using her word, she said the education that we have, there's one lecture that she gave on decolonization. He used some very strong words, she used some very strong words. I don't want to repeat them. But she said it needs overhaul. Not so? It needs overhaul to the extent that we need to liberate our minds. So name changing is just a small aspect of decolonization. Decolonization is a complex phenomenon. I once had a chance to talk with the president about changing the name where he sleeps in Nakasero. I asked him whether he knew who Tanan was. He said, who was he? I don't know. But he said, yeah, we will change those names, we will change them. But we have some more pressing issues today. I don't know whether those issues will go away tomorrow, in 10 years, maybe not. But we must start somewhere. Hillary Clinton said, each of us in our positions, every day, what we do, what we say, what we read, can make a difference. And for me, where I am, I can talk about Colville until the chickens come back. I can talk about Tanan, I can talk about Lugard, and I don't believe, and next year, it's one of the things that I want to do, because the political process has failed to resolve this issue, we are going to try the legal and court process. And to see if our constitutional court, I don't know if there are some judges here still, if our constitutional court can provide or can hold that the continuation of the celebration of people like Lugard, people like Colville, people like Tanan, people like Mackinnon is consistent with our dignity as Africans and with our right as a people who are subjugated and exploited by colonialism. I want to take this to the courts. But let me also say that this whole colonization thing is deep. Some of the university professors here who live on York Street or Prince Philip or some of those places in Kololo with high names, Princess Anne, Princess Ella, when you tell them that this road should be changed to Bazeko Keta Road, they will say, no, I mean, want to live on Prince Charles, on Prince William, on King George. Who is King George? And what does he mean to you? What does he represent to you? So if a university professor, I don't know on professor, the name of your road, but you go and examine it. You will find in Chambogo, you will find a whole road as if you are in rural England. Convey, I don't know, all those names. Baskerville, they have Cornwall, they have York, they have, what do those things mean to us? Really? As opposed to Nabunya.
Yes.
We have started, and that's why I commend you.
Yes.
And we must continue.
Yes.
We must continue. Other universities, roads must fall. All the universities across the world, the prominent ones, in South Africa, in the UK, Bristol is one of those that had to pull down.
Yes.
People who traders in slavery and so on, they are pulling them down. And I'm really, really happy, Chancellor, that Makerere is beginning to wake up, to question and to celebrate Ugandan heroes. Was there another question?
Let us take this opportunity to thank our keynote speaker for that response and the keynote as well. Thank you very much, Oweekitiibwa Makubya, for helping us to rethink, to reframe, and also to reconstruct culture. I think you've helped to give us some interesting questions to go away with that we can work with as Makerere University and Uganda. So thank you very much for this time.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know we have gone over our time, but we are winding up now. Owekitiibwa Robert Waggwa Nsibirwa okusemba yayo kabadde kakodyo. So please bear with us, accept our indulgence that we shuffled the program about so that you can give your remarks after we have listened to our keynote speaker. Let me take this opportunity to invite you to make some remarks.
I'll stand on the protocol that was ably illuminated by Ssentebe w'Abaganda Nkobazambogo, Makerere University, and all the previous speakers. But I want to pass the opportunity to recognize my OB, the Vice Chancellor of this university. And people don't know I went to Busoga College Mwiri. We are in a very festive mood. Our OB, Nadiope the Fourth, has got in event, so we are in a very good way. Ladies and gentlemen, all estimated guests here, and also the academic community at Makerere, I bring apologies of the Katikkiro of Buganda, Charles Tamaiga. He was invited, he was supposed to be here, but due to prior commitments, he was unable to move. He wasn't able to come here today. And he sent me to make a few remarks on behalf of the kingdom. But also, I thought I would make remarks on behalf of the greater Mantuza and Nsibirwa family. They have introduced almost everybody. But allow me to introduce three people among us. My Senga Wange, the late Katikkiro Mantuza Nsibirwa still has 3 surviving children, and 2 of them are here. The eldest surviving child, Senga Wange, Honorable Rhoda Nsibirwa Narweje Nachibuka Kalema. She's 94 years only. And we thank God because all our faculties are still intact. The second child is the acting last born of the late Katikkiro Mantuza Nsibirwa, because the last born and alumnus of this university, Dr. Rosemary Nakasi Chigonya, passed on. So he's the second last born of thereabout. Tata Wange, John Sendagire Chigobe Nsibirwa. He's a young man of 83 years only. And there is a son to the house of the great Nsibirwa family who married Senga Wange, Muko Wanasika Mukodomi Wange, Chief Justice Emeritus Samuel Wako Wambuzi. He's with us here. And he's only 93 years old. So we are doing well. I'm here to do 3 things, and very briefly, Madam Guest of Honor. On behalf of the Kingdom of Uganda, on behalf of the greater Nsibirwa family, we continue to thank the Council and Administration of the University of Makerere for honoring the Katikkiro of Buganda, Mantuza Nsibirwa, and also the father and grandfather of the great Nsibirwa family, with an annual Nsibirwa public lecture. This occasion has continued to inspire everybody in Buganda and Uganda and in the family, those who aspire to leave a lasting mark of goodness on the world have been given hope that it can happen when you serve honorably, when you sacrifice, and we are happy that the legacy of Martin Luther Nsibirwa endures in this honorable manner with an annual lecture. The second part is what Wechitiwa Makubuya has discussed so ably. Today, speaking as the second Peter Katikiro and on behalf of the Katikiro, I just want to mention that the Kingdom of Uganda, speaking to the theme of today, focuses on three bottom lines. Rotarian from DFCU may have only one bottom line, but the Kingdom of Uganda has three bottom lines, and that's what we focus on as a cultural institution in the modern times. Number one, we focus on protection, preservation, promotion and development of our culture and heritage. And this includes the language, the norms, the sites, and leadership. And I'm happy today, Jajjange Katikiro Nsibirwa yeye diranvuma nange ne diranvuma. Muzikirize nyanjule Jajjange owakasolya kyaddondo mbuga eramula. He's the head of the clan, the Vuma clan. So that's the first bottom line. And the second bottom line, you can't continue to be relevant, even with protection and preservation and development of culture, if it doesn't mean anything to people. And we have come up with, for the last 30 years, ways of the second bottom line is to see how to support the population of Buganda to transform socially and economically. We look at education, we look at health, we look at economic empowerment, and we have become a case study, CAS, on how to use a cultural and heritage approach to fight AIDS, to mobilize for immunization, donate blood, and through this, we have been invited to speak and demonstrate how we have been able to do that. Buganda Kingdom, or His Majesty the Kabaka's government, is on record to have been able to collect the biggest pints of blood in one day in the world, and he got an award. And using a cultural approach to do some of those things. And AIDS prevalence in Uganda, and AIDS is most prevalent in Uganda because of the nature everybody is here, has gone down by half since the Kabaka became the patron of fighting AIDS, women leading the fight against AIDS to save the girl child. The third and last bottom line is to ensure that the kingdom is financially sustainable to support the first two bottom lines. So the kingdom invests. We have over 20 trading companies. We are in telecom, we are in media, we are in education, we are in real estate, and the money we get from there, beyond the donations, allows us to support the first two crucial bottom lines. So as I conclude, Vice Chancellor and Director of the program, allow me to once again thank Owekitiibwa Apollo Nelson Makubuya. He was named after the Obi of Mwiri. You know, Bote went to Mwiri. No, he was born when they asked, I think somebody was going to the moon, and the parents said, yes, you should also be Apollo. Thank you so much for discussing this topic, giving it the genesis historically, and also presenting it in the modern framework. I'm sure the research institution of Makerere has benefited, but all of us have benefited. We continue to learn about our kingdom. We continue to learn about what our people are able to do that people of today can't do even a half of that. So thank you so much for those insights. I thank once again the university. Thank you so much. We are indebted. And all of you, I'd like to request the grandchildren of the late Martin Luther Nsibirwa Katikiro to stand up. They are here. Those are some of the grandchildren. Jajja yalina abaana senga ayinza okumpakanya naye jajja yalina abaana abamanyiddwa 27 bokka. 27 bokka. I would like to end by requesting the university they have institutionalized this annual public lecture. I would like to request you to deepen the institutionalization by appointing maybe 2 people from Buganda and 2 people from Nsibirwa family to work with you annually to prepare this lecture. But we are very grateful for what has been done. We may not bring money, but we can bring a few things on board, including mobilization, so that it becomes bigger, better, and bolder. Thank you so much. Ssaabasajja Kabaka awangale.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Oweekitiibwa Waggwa Nsibirwa, for that offer, that last offer that he has made, but also he has further reinforced the theme of today, situating the role and relevance of cultural institutions in Uganda by the examples that he has shared. At this juncture, let me invite none other than the Vice Chair, Makerere University Council, to make his remarks and wrap up the session. Mr. Fred Kidega, Vice Chair, Makerere University Council. You're most welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. The former Chief Justice of Uganda, His Worship Samuel Wako Wambuzi, the keynote speaker, Oweekitiibwa Apollo, and your wife, members of the University Council, may I kindly request you just to rise and wave to the audience so that you are known that you are around, the members of the University Council who are around. Please kindly wave. The Vice Chancellor of the University and the top management of the university who are present here. The former Katikiro, Oweekitiibwa Joseph Mulwanyamuli Semugerere. The second Deputy Katikiro, Oweekitiibwa Robert Waggwa Nsibirwa. Oweekitiibwa Prince David Wasajja, my very good friend, you're most welcome to the university. Members of the Lukiko and Buganda cabinet members who are present. The Chief Executive and Managing Director of DFCU, Mr. Charles Mudiwa. The great family of the late Martin Luther Nsibirwa, you're most welcome. And thank you for honoring us with your presence. The Guild President and the Guild leadership that is present here, distinguished citizens, both from Buganda Kingdom and other parts of Uganda who have gathered here. Good evening. On behalf of the University Council, allow me to take this opportunity to welcome you back home to your university. You're welcome. On behalf of the University Council chairperson, who has requested me to extend his apology to you because she could not be present due to other duties and requested me to stand in for her here. Madam Rona Magara salutes you and thanks you so much for coming and gracing this occasion. I have a very long speech which has been properly crafted for the chair of the council to read out, but I'll borrow the leave of the Vice Chancellor, just give a summary and not take a lot of your time. We'd like to appreciate you, Owechitiba Apollo Makubuya, for delivering this very loaded and pregnant, bold lecture on this day. We thank you, we don't take it for lightly. You've exactly done exactly what we expected from you. Congratulations and God bless you so much. We'd like to appreciate the family of Nsibirwa for allowing us as a university to celebrate this name with you. Thank you so much for giving us this glory. In a very special way, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. Thank you so much for standing with the young people and the lecture. DFCU Bank, we wish you to be the best bank in Africa and continue supporting the university. Take our appreciation to the entire system. The Vice Chancellor and the top management of this university. Council is very happy with you. You know, the story of the African people has been distorted. We don't celebrate our heroes. This is a great work you're doing. Celebrating our heroes and making to the young people known the history of this country. We thank you so much, top management. We don't take it for granted as council. We would like to thank the government of Uganda. There are countries in this continent that cannot sit like we are seated here and talk boldly about the history and great people of their country. So we thank the government of Uganda through President Museveni and mainly our minister that has afforded us the opportunity to have these public lectures. Thank you so much. I'd like to also thank the organizing committee. You've always done us proud. Maintain the decorum and the standard of the public lecture. I'd like to thank so much the Deputy Katikiro for offering to strengthen the next lecture by joining us in the organization. Council has taken it up and management has embraced it. We thank you so much for that. I also must thank the audience for coming. In the next lecture, we don't expect to see any empty chair, and all even the balcony should be full. We thank you so, so much. We as a university celebrate the value system that has been exhibited by Nsibirwa and the family. What I ask myself personally is, where is the Nsibirwa of our generation? Where are they? The keynote address presenter has made it very clear to you. He presented his humility and honesty in leadership. He sacrificed his whole life to make sure there's this university. He could have gone to Kenya or to Tanzania. We thank the family. We ask God to bless him wherever he is. I'm sure he's standing with smiles wherever he is right now because we are celebrating him. We'd like to urge the young people, read more about him, learn the values and the value system that he has left with us, and practice it, please. And I plead to everybody in the leadership space of this country and Africa, let's emulate the value system and the work he has done. He did not use his power to disgrace his community or to grab people's property. The presenter talked to you what is going on in this country, land grabbing. How much land does one need? Why do you deprive poor people from owning their own land? Why do you take advantage of your office to cause injustice to people? Let's pay attention to the value system left with us by Nsibirwa. In a very special way, I would like to thank the kingdom. You know, Buganda Kingdom is an amazing kingdom. Very welcoming, very warm, very firm. Keep it up. I would like to testify the welcoming nature of the Buganda Kingdom or Buganda people. When I was a young man, I was sent on duty in Zimbabwe to mobilize people for my political party. When I addressed the district council, then the leadership then said, "Negwe msajja we ngo ina empisa ya Baganda. Obeera otya nti oli mu kyoli." So from that day, I was named, given a Buganda name. Bampita Sekitoleko. Ni muzukulu wa Mugema. Nchima clan, of course. Akabiro tetuli abyenda. So this is to tell you how warm this kingdom and welcoming it is to people who do not come from the Buganda culture. Please, on behalf of the University Council, extend our strong message of appreciation and goodwill to the King and the entire kingdom. As a university, we will continue to celebrate the African people and all Ugandans who have made contribution to life. Agunda gunde.
A very deep appreciation to Right Honorable Daniel Fred Kidega Sekitoleko for those remarks and for bringing us to another step of this function. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to launch the book written by Oweekitiibwa Apollo Nelson Makubuya. I'm advised that we'll have a few remarks about the book, and then we can launch the book. Oweekitiibwa Daudi Mpanga, I'm informed that you've had an opportunity to read the book. I will grant you 3 minutes because I know you're very able in delivering your message in 3 minutes to review this book. Oweekitiibwa Daudi Mpanga.
Thank you very much. I'll take less than 3 minutes because everybody has taken, I think, more than their 10 minutes. This is a very good book with which I agree wholeheartedly. My only disagreement with it is actually set out at the very beginning. There's blurb, a little blurb at the beginning, write-ups from right from above, Ssaabasajja Kabaka, the Katikkiro of Buganda, Professor Nelson Kasfa, a leading political scientist, Frederick Golova Mutebi, a leading political scientist, and myself. I think Dr. John Jacobs takes the last position in order to keep the Ugandan popular saying of last but not least. My disagreement with the book entails one thing, that for the longest time there's been this framing of the so-called Buganda question. I see here Ssaabasajja Kabaka also calls it the Buganda question, as does Apollo. Actually, Buganda has been around for 700 years, or more, perhaps 800 years. And indeed, in the book, Apollo does cite that. I think it's around page 3, where he says, the question revolves around integration challenges faced by a 700-year-old kingdom within the 61-year-old colonial construct of Uganda. So I ask Apollo, as I'll ask all of you who are going to buy and read this book, Why then, if one is 700 years old, is the question framed as the Buganda question. Buganda exists. It has existed for 700 years. It will exist for 700 more. Uganda, the colonial construct, has only existed for 61 years, and we're not very sure whether it can endure all the challenges. And indeed, when the constitution is being changed, we are told, don't change the helmsman, because if the helmsman should change, we may fall apart. Buganda has gone through very many changes over 700 years. The question is not an Ankole question, it's not an Acholi question, it's not a Buganda question, it is a Uganda question. It is a question of whether that which was constructed by the colonialists will exist and continue to subsist in a situation where it's taking from the native for the benefit of a few, and whether we can continue to justify that situation. And I think that's what Apollo brings out very well in this book, that one example of native indigenous wealth in terms of the governance structures, the native institutions, coming to help, literally help the colonial state in a number of situations where the colonial state has been lacking and continues to lack, but cannot see that lack because of the white supremacist views that were imbued in it. I'm very happy to see Pastor Sempa today dressed as an African priest, even though he can stand up and model for everybody. Because usually, because you see, forever, the construct is that these are backward, these are the things of the past, leave them. So I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to recommend this book to everybody. It's very well written, it's short, which I understand even university students like. They don't like to read long things. It's short and it addresses the key issues, whether it be the land question, whether it be the finances issues, whether it be the federalism issue, whether it be social economic development. All of these things you'll find in this book. I recommend it highly. And I'm sure now I'll hand back to the MC in order that it may be formally launched. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Owechitibwa Mpanga. You have not disappointed, and you have been able to deliver your very succinct review of the book in less than 5 minutes. It is that moment, ladies and gentlemen, that we have been waiting for, the launch of Owechitibwa Apollo Makubia's book. I'm going to request the following persons to come up to the podium, to come up and be part of the launch of this tape. Mr. Mudiwa from DFCU, Ms. Reisman, Vice Chair Council, Mr. Kidega Daniel, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, Vice Chancellor, Mrs. Makubuya, Anne, Owechitibwa Wasajja, Omlangira Wasajja, Owechitibwa Wagwa Nsibirwa have been requested that you represent your family, that you represent the retired Chief Justice and Lady Rhoda Nsibirwa Kalema. Kindly come up. Owechitibwa Mulwanyamuli Semwogerere, we beg your indulgence if you're able to come up for the launch, and Owechitibwa Kawase Twaha. Kindly come up for the launch of the book. As Mrs. Makubia comes up, The founding father of the United States, Benjamin Franklin, wrote and said, you either write something worth reading or you do something worth writing about. Owekitiibwa Makubuya, I believe by writing this book, it was worth writing, but you have also done a lot that is worth reading. So thank you very much, and we take this opportunity to launch this book. 10, 9, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, launch. And the book is duly launched, Thrones and Thorns, 30 years of restoration of traditional rule in Uganda. Can we please have some markers so that we can sign on the book? And we are also going to request the author, Owekitiibwa Makubuya, to please sign some copies that will be given out to select guests. Thank you very much, DFCU, for the first print of the book. They supported the print of 200 copies. Professor Nawangwe, Mackay University, is going to receive 100 copies of the book and 100 copies to give away. As we prepare for the picture moment, let me also take this opportunity to allow the author to present a few copies to these distinguished individuals. We want to take this opportunity to present the first signed copy to Mama Rhoda Kalema Nsibirwa. Owekitiibwa, we are still waiting for some signed copies. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. This is the most interesting part of this kind of events. Owekitiibwa, can we please have you sign some? Okay. Photo, please. Can we please come together, and then Owekitiibwa will sign. Professor Nawangwe, we need to see you. What a memorable day today. Thank you, DFCU, for the reprint of the book, 200 copies, and Mackay University is getting 100 copies of the book. Owekitiibwa, can you kindly sign some copies? As Owekitiibwa signs, let us get ready. The first presentation is going to Mama Rhoda Kalema. I don't know who's going to help us with that, whether Owekitiibwa. I don't know whether Mama Rhoda will be able to come up. I doubt it. but we'll be happy to bring a copy to her. As the books get signed, we shall allow Owechitiwa Makubuya to present the book to Mama Rhoda on his way back down to his seat. Can I please request Prince Wasaja to come up for a signed copy of the book, if he's still here with us. Omulangira Wasaja. Vice Chair, Right Honorable Daniel Fred Kidega, can you kindly come and receive a signed copy? Owechitiwa is still signing, and I don't know whether he'll be able to present himself, but Mrs. Anne Makubuya, now we are going to request you also to assist in the presentation as the signing goes on. That is presentation to Vice Chair Council, Honorable Right Honorable Daniel Fred Kidega. Owechitiwa Wagwa, Robert Nsibirwa. Yes, please. Kindly come and pick a copy. The signing is quite tedious. I'm going to propose that we receive these copies and we allow the author to sign as the afternoon winds up. Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, the signing. What do I do now? Is to leave out the books? So who are we presenting to? As we continue with the book signing and presentation, Professor Nawangwe would like to appreciate Owechitiwa Makubuya. As we continue with the book signing, Professor Nawangwe, Prof. I'm looking for Professor Nawangwe. Could you kindly come up? We have a few gifts that the university would like to present, Professor Nawango would like to present to our guests today. Owechitiibwa Makubuya, can you kindly hold on the signing? Professor Nawangwe would like to present to you a small token of appreciation for your time. Would also like Owechitiibwa Makubuya we request that you receive this kind token of appreciation from Makerere University. That is a token of appreciation from Makerere University that Professor Barnabas Nawangwe is giving to Owechitiibwa Makubuya. Thank you very much for presenting the keynote this afternoon. Wow. Thank you very much, Professor Nawangwe. Would also like to request Mr. Mudiwa. Mr. Mudiwa, kindly come up and receive a small token of appreciation from Makerere University. Yes, please. And Miss Anne Reisman, kindly please. Professor Nawangwe would like to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Mudiwa. DFCU Bank supported the print of 200 copies of this book. Thank you very much, DFCU Bank. Thank you for supporting this event. Would also like Miss Anne Reisman would like to present to you as Makerere University a token of appreciation. And lastly, would like to present as Makerere University a token of appreciation to Mrs. Anne Juko Makubuya. A token of appreciation to you too. Thank you very much for coming along with Owechitiibwa Makubuya. Wow, what a lovely shirt. Beautiful Makerere colors. Thank you very much, Makerere University. Thank you very much, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe. We shall now continue with the signing of the books. Omlangira Wasajja, I don't know if you're still around. Omlangira Wasajja. Should we close? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this occasion. We really appreciate as Makerere University. Thank you, Sebo. Thank you, Prof. Keep up. Yeah, keep up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Prof. The author is continuing to sign copies. There will be copies to the following individuals. Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, have you received your copy? Okay.
Bishop Awel, they are signing his book. Awel.
Bano bafunye wagwa Nsibirwa.
Awel.
Mr. Awel, Uwihanjani, come and receive your book. Yes, as chairperson organizing committee. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. We truly appreciate the Makerere spirit.